Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kim Menyai. I'm an account executive at Wiz, not to be confused with Wix, which is the online website builder spelled W-I-X. We are W-I-Z. But for those who are not familiar with Wiz, we're a cloud security platform. Essentially, our entire mission is to help you secure everything that you build and run in the cloud. But super excited to be the moderator for tonight to talk about the future of cloud security. We have an incredible panel here in front of us today with leaders from Clio, Neo Financial, and Wiz to unpack what's going on in cloud security today, what's working, what's not, forward thinking as well. We'll get some AI in the conversation too. But before we kick things off, panelists, if you could quickly introduce yourself, name, title, company, but also answer this one question. If there is one security hill that you would be absolutely willing to die on, what would that be? And something that, the industry would completely disagree with.
Hey, thanks for everybody coming out. Thanks, Wiz, for sponsoring. Just a quick side note, I also came from a company that was purchased by a giant soul-sucking UF multinational that has also had CIA, NSA ties, so totally get what you guys are going through, but you can actually survive really well. You just have to go around as a gorilla for a long period of time because they're going to crush you, but I'm just kidding. Google's super good. I watch Mr. Beast every day as a good drink.
We will continue to act independent.
My name's Septon. I just moved over to Neo Financial. Look after the tech stuff, so the CIO, and I forget the question.
So if there is one security hill that you'd be willing to die on that the rest of the industry would not agree with, what is that?
Okay, this is going to be a little weird because I think the industry agrees that you should do this, but if you look around, even local to Calgary, I think we've got massive. I used to work at WestJet. It was not my fault. I've been gone a long time. They're in a massive cyber attack right now. Suncor was, and it's the industry knows they should do software-defined networking, and they just don't. And you just have to do it. It's when my kids, I always use this one. It's my kids are like, "Hey, Dad, brushing my teeth is really slowing me down. I want to be agile." Okay, you have to fucking brush your teeth. That's just, there's no getting around that. And most of the industry still, and especially the older and kind of stuck in their ways spots, they just don't do software-defined networking, and it's the most important thing you have to do. It's the first line of defense, even before you talk to our friends at Wiz. So I think kind of answered in what the angle. I don't know, they're protecting the business, but
I have no idea how to follow that up. That's a good intro. My name's Gavin. I am the Director of Application Security at Clio. Been there for 6 years. My line when I'm interviewing people and introduce myself that way is, I know where the bodies are buried. I help to bury some of them. In terms of, the thing that I think may be I don't know if it is. You tell me. I think security gets in the way of velocity of development quite a bit, and I think it's our job to get out of the way while staying secure. So that might be a hot take. I've got more. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not hearing gasps, so maybe that's accepted.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. So as an interim, Joseph, I work at Wiz as a solutions engineer. I look after all of our majors customers here in Western Canada. Before Wiz, I was at Amazon for almost 5 years and decided to make the jump to Wiz, and I guess for Google as well. So my hot take, this one is probably not a hot take to most of you, but it is to all the big companies I get to work with, is physical MFA for your most privileged accounts, right? A lot of people think, oh, I just use my authenticator and it has Face ID and that's good enough. And it's man, when you've seen, the top level Azure Entra DA get compromised, or your root password and username on your AWS site get compromised, nothing will save you more than having physical MFA. So Again, hopefully that's not fake for you guys, but most companies sell those.
Cool. Let's dive in, guys. So the shift, what is actually changing? So as you know, the cloud security environment really doesn't sit still, and neither do we, right? Your infrastructure is getting more and more complex. And of course, the pressure to keep up is astronomical. So Gavin, I'll start with you. What is something that has shifted significantly in the past year, whether that be your threat surface, your team structure, your cloud infrastructure or architecture, that's really forced you to rethink how you approach security?
Yeah, that one's pretty easy. So we had a acquisition at Clio for a company called ShareDo. They're based in the UK, and they serve a market that Clio hadn't addressed in our core product. For that one, they were an entirely different architecture. You know, for the longest time, we had very tight control over everything. They were a single tenancy model, so we went from having, I don't know, under 50 kind of nodes that we would look at. There's more than that, but you know, external nodes, and it exploded by a factor of 12 at that point. So at that point, you can no longer keep that in one person's head or in the production engineering team's head, and we had to think about, okay, we're not going to be able to add people, so how do we start to scale the security sublinearly as the business scales linearly or hyperlinearly? That's a hard word.
And Steph, I know that you've only been at Neo for the past 5 months or so. So I'd also kind of reframe the question. Going from Morgan Stanley to Neo, what was the biggest shift, I guess, in the team in terms of what you had to focus on from Morgan Stanley to Neo from a security perspective?
It's probably pretty boring answer in the fact that like just the ultra size organizations or the smaller startups, it's like you have to spend so much time on the phone management world, and Gavin talked about it, like the number of people you have to do, like the amount of cognitive load on the teams to cover this, the more your new projects you're working on, the more vulnerabilities that are exposed, the faster the SLAs, the more you become regulated, the quicker, like now it's not just bad hygiene, like a regulator is actually going to come and ask you what your SLA was. So trying to figure out what the best way to do that is for teams who are probably used to like a smaller surface, and it just kind of sneaks up on you. So it's no matter if you're the large organizations or the small one, the number of hygiene items you have to just deal with on a day-to-day basis, like companies like yourself really help on that, but it's not a totally solved problem. And a lot of places I noticed, they kind of do it as they're forced into it, but it is, if you can try to build it into your DevSecOps pipelines, it just makes you like so much easier. You can scale at size, but all places are kind of dealing with the same issue.
And Joseph, from your perspective, you're working with various security teams across multiple different cloud environments. Where are you seeing security teams being pulled in earlier, and what do you think really prompted that shift?
Yeah, I mean, for Calgary and Western Canada, a lot of it has been some high-profile attacks that I would talk about that are even happening today or happened a couple of years ago, right? So it's starting to make people wake up. The other thing that I've started to see that's new and interesting is, you know, infrastructure as code is starting to catch on pretty deeply now. Even companies that were traditionally ClickOps are starting to do it. But at the same time, we have this whole thing of generative AI coming. So it's very easy to quickly generate a bunch of boilerplate baseline stuff where, you know, here's your basic VPC or your IAM role that has SAR roles or SAR access to F3 or something like that, right? And then you just slap it in. And with infrastructure as code on large environments, you'll start to see that get spread out so quickly, right? So just like there's the good parts to infra as code that, hey, if I define it once securely, it should be securely deployed everywhere.
Well, thank you. So really the pace has changed, the terrain has changed, but what starts happening once we start moving at scale, right? So we all love growth. I mean, there's different different tiers of growth, right? If you look at, Clio, 900 million in funding last year, Neo, 362 million in funding last fall, right? Incredible, right? But what else can grow? Of course, your cloud footprint. Now, what's not a good thing about this is, of course, if your cloud environment starts acting, like a toddler on espresso, right? So the trick here, and someone touched on it earlier, is how do you stay secure, but not at the same time, slam the brakes on innovation? So I guess we'll start with you, Steph. As your organization is scaling, your team is growing, your cloud footprint is growing, your roadmap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And how have you found the tension between speed and security the most dramatic, right? So you have a developer that's saying, YOLO meaning you only live once. And then you have security saying, heck no, right? Like, how do you kind of balance that tug of war there?
Yeah, I actually think like a lot of organizations are getting a lot better is kind of a bullshit architecture term, which is like the DevSecOps. But as companies are way better at just to talk about it, like terraforming things, infrastructure as code, and you're like building all this into your pipelines, I think you do have to force that hygiene early, and you can scale more faster. Like if that's the more and more you invest in those automated tests, the better the outcome is. I've actually found them like more going back to the roots of the Gen AI piece. People are using it, like especially from like a desktop side. They do crazy things. They'll put, allegedly, not our company, but Husker data within the Gen AI world. You're really having to double down on kind of those like DLP rules, things that when you talk about too long, everybody's eyes glaze over. But that's actually a bit more of the, you can go to like older organizations, and it's not to say that like slop code doesn't exist. AI is generating like infinite amounts of slop code. So, but that goes back to DevSecOps pipelines. Like, are you actually checking for all of these terrible things already? And if you haven't, probably should just be a little bit careful when you're, I don't know, letting the product person push something to prod. So I think those are kind of the two tension pieces right now.
Yeah, from excuse me, from my side of things, and I think this might also have been a controversial opinion when I talked to some vendors, at least certainly is. You need to meet the developer where they're at. So that means either in their IDE or in the PR. And I've had some of those conversations of like, I don't want to go in your bespoke panel. Sorry, Wiz. I as the security person.
I have an IDE.
Yeah. You talked about it. Yeah. But I don't want the developer to have to do that. I want them to get the answer they're looking for, the education that they need in a just-in-time fashion, because they want to learn about it as they're in the moment. If you have to get them to come back or get them to slow down their velocity, they lose that attention. I lose that. I'm the slot coder, right? I'm a director. I get 20 minutes to code. I'm going to rattle it off, see if I can get it into production, see if anybody reviews my code. We're recording this, right? That human element is going to be a factor, but as we get we're trialing out a whole bunch of tools, Codex being one of them at Clio. And I denial of service my team on code reviews in about 2 hours, because you can just produce so much. And this is the worst it will ever be. It is only going to get better. And as security, we have to, I don't know the answer. You probably shouldn't have put me on the panel, but I don't know what that looks like to protect that volume of code going into production. Like there's going to be huge changes in the industry.
Joseph, different question for you. Were early red flags that a team security approach isn't keeping up with their expanding cloud footprint?
Interesting. I think you start to see it when the vulnerabilities from other tools you want to have start to step up, or you start to see those overly permissive things. Like it all starts with, a little, hey, I need an exception and just please grant the admin this one time. but then it starts to get out of hand really quickly. That's usually where you see it, right? And especially as companies grow and shrink their cloud teams, especially since it's very tough to hire very, very good cloud people sometimes, that could have an impact as well, right? Or you might go through an outsourcing, and then a lot of that knowledge that used to be in the company is gone, and then suddenly that's where the cut corners start to come out, right? But one thing I want to touch on, based on what Gapo said, is very interesting. It's like meeting the developers where they're at is super, super important. And Wiz is trying to build toward that as well. But one thing that I found really unique that I learned when I joined Wiz from Amazon is like, developers can get flooded with, here's a cajillion CVEs, here's a cajillion SQL injections that you need to go fix. But knowing the implications of why that's important actually helps a lot in helping a developer know why they should actually care to fix it, right? Like, do you care about fixing CVE 2025, blah, 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 right? But like, one of the things we're trying to do with Wiz is like, hey, let's show you why that CVE actually matters in an attack path rather than just swarm you with CVEs, right? And that helps to make the problem more human, I guess, rather than just a gigantic list of few.
Joseph stole my analogy, so we'll transition on here to noise here. But if you think about something like a Defender, right? You log in, you have 100,000 alerts, all CVEs that you need to fix now, right? Having 100,000 alerts is just as good as having none, right? So how do you actually separate the fire from the false alarms? So Gavin, we'll start with you. Where every cloud service is shouting for attention, how do you train your team to separate the must act now versus can do later? And where exactly have you found clarity, and where do you find your teams are kind of still playing whack-a-mole?
Good question. I think a lot of it is training, it's experience, it's pairing up with your colleagues to know how to triage, to know what is important, to know what is not important. Obviously, you insert the tools there that help you make that determination. I think where that sweet spot is I tell my team this is what I tell them in their performance reviews. You should not be doing the same job a year from now that you're doing today. And that means you should be shipping automation, you should be shipping code. I don't hire analysts for that reason. Like I hire programmers. And I think if you're in security, if you're not programming or not learning how to program, like you need to automate your job away. The Vibe Code tools make it easier to do that. And it's really trying to get rid of that 80% of the noise, however you do that, whatever means, dismissing the regex denial of service vulnerabilities, because that's not going to do anything. And then you use that human intelligence on that 20%, and then augmenting it. And I think we're going to see some of those pipelines get better and get more intelligent. Again, I'm going to keep saying AI. I'm an AI fanboy. I just put that out there. Somebody wrote a paper that they published, blog post, they're the same thing. Got an AI to write an exploit in a couple hours, right? And that's the world that we're coming to, where you can write the exploits, so you can write the proof of concept very quickly. And so then that allows you as a security team to go validate, like, yeah, okay, we can go exploit this, and the tools integrate them. Like, I know you guys are doing that. So figuring out that path of how do we get signal from the noise as quickly as possible using every conceivable tool we have. And who cares if it's slop code, as long as it executes a payload, like you're still fucked. Pardon the language.
This one was actually a little easier coming from the megacorp side, and to follow the perfect circle of life. Especially when you work for U.S. companies, you have companies like Google go lobby the lawmakers that force you, and they write the laws specifically to use their products, which is awesome. And you wouldn't want that anywhere else. And then you actually have regulators who 15 years ago wouldn't have asked you this, but you have to come in with 100% clean bill of health across anywhere from like a P1, E2. So like the very first thing you have to do is actually just make sure you've got good classification. And you have to have those SLAs. There's no getting around it. No matter how much the robots do things for you, human has to be in the loop. They have to go in and say, okay, I've got a P1, E2. It has to be closed within 12 hours. And then like as you go down the range, less and less you have to respond. But it was actually super easy. They're just like, okay, you can't have anything that lasts longer than 6 months. Otherwise you have to do an issue and a risk acceptance. And then you have to file that within your own second line of defense, third line of defense, fourth line of defense, internal audit. Then it has to go to the regulators. Then if you get on a list. So it's super easy from that. But because you have no choice, otherwise one of them will show up like with a blacked out van in front of your house and your kids don't see you again. And because of that type of innovation like coming to a smaller company, it's much easier to say, you could just outsource a bunch of this work, but Gavin said it best. Force the teams to create, like, you've got to force them to kind of an uncomfortable situation. Set some SLAs that you're slowly making harder to hit, which then forces the innovation and the automation that's going to require you to just kind of have a clean bill of health. It's not worth having all of these sitting. It causes like cognitive overload for the developers, for your systems analysts, for your infrastructure people. You gotta, like the companies these days, it's much easier. You don't have to fight for the resources. People understand that this is semi-light, like at least company life and death if you don't do the right things. So that's the right answer. Automate it all. Get rid of every one of those things. Skinny down your images so that you're not actually putting them into production. Force yourself into basically like, I've got to have a complete clean bill of health every single month. And I think that's the right call.
The intent is you're always like, I could have an auditor show up tomorrow and the amount of evidence I have to produce is so minimal because we've got that always going in and, at a push of a button, like, okay, go push the latest snapshot. Let's go fix these 3 things. It's the end done. So having that automation even into your GRC platform is also huge there too.
Joseph, what patterns have you seen in wildly successful companies that have leveled up from basic alert fatigue to very signal-rich context prioritization? Mouthful.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, like, our tool is very good at...
I was going to say, don't say what it's
are pretty good at prioritization, but where I've seen some of our customers go a level further is adding in business context. So, like, we'll show you, hey, there's a bunch of attack paths, right? But like, do you know which of your applications is actually key to how you make money, right? So adding in the business level context on top of just the technology context really helps with the prioritization. That way, when you know that there's a critical on the money-making system, it's like, all right, drop everything, guys, this will fix this, right?
Cool. Okay, so let's bring it back to the source of a lot of risk, the identity and human layer chaos. So identity is much like flossing. We're going to like this analogy. Everyone knows they should be doing it, but we all know that we could be doing it a little bit better, right? So we'll start with you, Steph. Where have you seen identity and access management or even secret management go sideways? We don't have to name any names, but on top of that, what people and process shifts helped, curb that issue as well?
I'm probably a lot of people here wouldn't be old enough. So, like, first time you had to do like PCI audits, and which forced a lot of it was good, probably better than the government, because what's more powerful than the government? The credit card industry, which works as a cabal, and government could be like, maybe they'll fine you, but then you can lobby out of it. The credit card companies are like, okay, if you don't do some of these things, we won't let you process credit cards. And that's a really good forcing function. So we had to use like the tools that were available at the time. And it's funny that even the old problems still are kind of the new problems. If you don't have good operational discipline, like who's got the break glass, because these privileged access management tools just go down, and they usually ideally go down when you're having a production outage. And then if you don't have your cyber team who's got a pager and they can respond, you bring the company down to its knees. Like, and that actually happens all the time. So it's that making sure that you still have people who they can answer the phone. Your ops genie is going to go to like multiple people. They can get those keys. They can break glass in case of emergency, because there eventually is going to be an emergency, and it'll typically happen at the absolutely worst time. So that's one that CyberArk was the first platform I used, and it's not very good. Hopefully they're not sponsoring it. I don't know if you guys want them, but there's so many good tools out there now. Like HashiCorp's probably getting a little long in the tooth, but it's very, very good. You can do almost everything you need. So it's doing that investment. It's so worthwhile. Like, you would probably, those local companies would not have had the events that they did have if they were really solid on just privileged access management, much less any identity and access management.
Yeah, I worked at Octum previously, and I left shortly after the first brief, so I'm well aware of these types of conversations.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll give you a bit of an anecdote. I was doing some capture the flag stuff, and there was the one thing you do is you grab, anytime you find a password, you go try it and everything, and that usually unlocks the door. And I'm like, this is dumb. Like, this is, this can't possibly happen in the real world. And we were looking at a due diligence and a merger and acquisition. We had some access to the back end. You find a secret and you're like, oh, I'll go try this over here. And it worked. And I was like, oh, shoot, this does work, which is super frightening and super scary from the secret side of like, people are, I took a picture of somebody's Post-it with their password on it the other day, not at our work, but like, people don't do the right thing. And so you have to, again, make it easy to do the right thing. An alternative to that HashiCorp side of things, we use something called eJSON at Clio. It's by Shopify. It's a library that allows developers to put the production secrets into a configuration that you check into your source code. And it means just the person that is taking the secret from the third party or whatever, they're the only one that touches it. It's encrypted. Only the server can decrypt it at the appropriate time. But there's lots of really good tools out there. And sometimes, we stray off our main language is Rails. We stray off the Rails secret management because it's not easy to use like that. And we make it easy to make the secure default the way to go. So.
And Joseph, you work with some of our largest customers across Canada here. So what would you say is still getting missed when it comes to identities and secrets? But what is also the quiet risk that people underestimate?
I would go back to the keys, right? Like, it's what I keep seeing over and over. Like, when we do proofs of value, we connect. That's like, man, did you even know you had these many cloud keys just sitting there? That's usually a huge eye opener for most customers. It's the amount of keys, and especially where they land out of convenience, right? Like, sometimes I've seen keys in buckets, I've seen keys in databases, and then what's really dangerous is when you start to increase your cloud footprint and get to be multi-cloud, the clouds don't talk to each other very well, right? Like, it's not trivial to go in and, as an AWS service account, assume a service account in Azure arrays. And that's where secret and key management becomes really, really important. So I would say that's one of the first places to start. If you don't have a good key management tool or platform or strategy, you should definitely look at that, because that's how the huge swaths of lateral movement get started, and that's where you start getting a lot of pain. Yeah.
So we've name dropped a couple of vendors here. So let's kind of pivot to the security tool stack. So I think we can all agree that security teams love tools until they absolutely hate them, especially when you can't tell what's actually helping versus what's just eating up the budget, right? So Steph, would love to hear from your perspective, what do those internal debates sound like when you're considering consolidation versus best of breed versus even building internally? And what how do you define a tool that actually helps move the needle?
Cybersecurity is a lot better than, like, I think probably a lot of you guys are walking through the cesspool of everybody naming the thing AI right now. And if like the last 3 weeks, had like 4 vendors come through, which are just like complete vaporware. They don't produce a thing. As soon as you ask them to clear a demo, they just walk away because they know they can sell it to somewhere else. Cyber tools are a lot better because you can actually usually measure now, and it's still till Google buys up the rest of the companies. Lots and lots of still vibrant competition. So I think the key thing is most of the vendors will actually do like proof of value with you. You have to do it. Don't just, somebody came, like the tools change so fast, 100% make sure you're doing proof of value. All the security vendors are really good about this. You can test it, bring in your developers, bring in your analysts. Don't have one group that hates the tool. Find like some acceptance criteria. And I don't think we got to industry consolidation right now. So it's still probably a little bit more of the range of best of breed or good enough. And some groups here will be from like super profitable companies. Some will be pre-profitability. You do have to go down, like up and down the value chain. And you're probably not going to get one size fits all right now. That eventually, like a lot of these consolidations happen and you can get one vendor that will do most of the things. I don't think that's still the case. So absolutely be militant about making sure that this product will do what they say it does. And often it's not like 10 years ago where it just doesn't do, you have to like work around it. Most of them kind of do what they say now. So you're not as worried about having like a really bad bet as you might have been at PagerGroup.
The thing I go back to with my team, and we're doing a vendor eval right now. What problem are you trying to solve? And that, more than anything else, if somebody doesn't come to me with that, whether that's building a feature for our product, building a tool, building whatever, if you don't know what you're aimed at and you don't get that like incredibly crisp, you're going to do the wrong thing. You're going to buy the wrong thing. You're going to make the wrong thing. You're going to make bad decisions. So I overemphasize that as the key piece to making decisions, and then everything else really just kind of falls in afterwards, and then you don't end up with the wrong tooling, with the wrong consolidation or vendor or whatever it is.
Cool. And Joseph, for you, when you walk into an environment and they have every single security tool under the sun, right? There's 10 teams using various different tools. How do you help the teams define what's actually delivering value versus what's like collecting dust? Or how have you seen teams define that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we were doing a POV recently, and they had 5 different EDR tools, right? And it's like, man, you guys really love your EDR tools.
And not even full coverage across all VMs.
There's 5 EDR tools, and then we did the analysis of like, oh, they still have like 200 tools with no EDR. It's like, well, you have 5 of those, juice rope. But a lot of times, and then, being a gallery, what you'll see is acquisitions all over, right? Like you just saw like Kira's buying a bunch of Plains assets and things move around, right? And one of the key things there is if you're on the IT side of those acquisitions, where usually this sprawl starts to balloon really badly, is to have something that gets you the visibility pretty quickly and see where those gaps might be between the different vendors that you're seeing, right? Another one that's interesting is if you can ask why, right? Like sometimes you just have a new server or a new asset dumped on you and you have no idea what's going on, but see if you can find out why a specific tool was chosen. There might be a good reason, right?
Okay, so it wouldn't be a panel without a conversation around AI. So let's talk about AI, compliance, this, unique future that we're in. So as we know, AI is here. It's writing code for us. It might even be rewriting some of our security policies as well. But of course, you have the GRC teams, you have the compliance teams that are really struggling, right, to keep up with everything AI related. Gavin, with AI moving so quickly, And of course, you have the regulators, especially in your industry, watching so closely. How are you balancing that excitement for experimenting with AI while also making sure that you're staying secure and compliant, right? Essentially, how are you going to avoid that like AI fueled facepalm?
Yeah, we're incredibly deliberate about the tools that we bring in. So everything goes through like a very trusted inner circle of testing it out. Park Plus is calling me. Hang on. So we make sure that everything gets vetted very, very thoroughly. Somebody from the security team is in there involved. Somebody from compliance is involved. And, it's asking a lot of questions, asking how the data is getting used, making sure it's properly segmented off, that it's not getting trained on, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's, also embracing it a little bit. Like I think there's a fear mindset that can sink in for security, for IT groups with this thing that's coming. And my CTO kind of gave us the charge of like, if we don't get on this is an existential threat to our company because someone else will, and they'll just come steal our customers, right? So we have to do it. We have to do it responsibly. We understand our industry. We know that our customers can sue us for free if we fuck up. So we got to make the right decisions there. But they want to use it just as badly. And so, we've got, for us at Clear, we've got a brand that we can go push behind that and say, okay, we've vetted this, and they know we vetted it. They don't, I don't actually get asked a lot of security questions, which is weird for my customers. And I think it's because they just inherently have that trust that they know we've done our due diligence on the tools and we're making the correct decisions to protect them. So I think it comes down to that customer focus and like putting good practices in that apply even when you're not using AI. I've got less than 12 people with production access. Like start that before you even get the AI people involved, because then you're just hedging your bets that much better. And it means you've got to build tools around that and enable developers and enable teams. And it gets really hard to do sometimes. But then when something goes rogue or something goes off the rails, nobody's got access. So you're fine.
Yeah, I think it was the CEO or co-founder of Shopify that wrote that public letter that said they want 80% or everyone in the company using AI, right? Like if you're coming to me with an ask for headcount, you need to explain to me why AI can't solve it, right? They want everyone in the company using AI.
So we measure this, the AI tool deployment versus the non-AI tool software developers. There's 2.5 times production sustained velocity for those that are using AI tools regularly. Like it's here. Somebody else is using it if your team isn't.
I think Gunn covered a lot of the, make sure that the hygiene is correct. Make sure your company, some of you guys will be regulated entities. Make sure it's not coming in as just like unlimited shadow IT. You've got to lock down a lot of those, like ensure your policies are tuned from data loss prevention, protection. You have to be pretty militant about that. People are going to be super pumped about this, ensuring that what's coming in, because there's not a lot of vetting. The smaller your company, the less you're able to do that. I would slow it down, go with probably some of the trusted vendors and trusted models, check those little boxes like don't train on our data. They're doing it anyway. I don't want to believe the ending. They're 100% training on your data. Google for sure is. But at least you said when the regulator comes and talks to you, you can say, okay, I deliberately said this should not be part of it. They'll go pay the regulator off in the background. The world will be a great place again. But just make sure a lot of those like simple things are under control before you do have to open the aperture up. Like the tools are changing on a weekly basis. So I think you have to probably take a little bit more risk than normal. Don't take unlimited risk. Bring the tools in, see which ones work, make sure there's some testing criteria around it. Gavin described it like measure like product velocity before and after, do an A/B test of some sort. And I would say like And if you're in the cyber world, I think we do just have to allow like, and also if you're pre-profitability, one of the big pushes I've had for the team is like, Morgan Stanley, I can have 1,500 people in a fusion response center, security operations center, NOC with no problems. You could scale that up by 10 or 15,000 people. We scaled through humans mostly. Pre-profitability can't. It's like a pretty good forcing function of like, what do you do? Neo is a fintech. We're a bank. We've got to look after people's money. But we can't responsibly grow if we have like a security operations center of 30 people or a really expensive outsourced one. The agentic piece does seem to be not as much snake oil, especially for like level 1, level 2 SOAR type things, like being able to respond, doing some of those like human level checks that says this is probably signal amongst the noise. I would say just embrace it from the cyber perspective, like start scaling and using these tools, especially from, even if it's like in a controlled environment with open web UI. So it's clicking some buttons. You've got some constraints around it, but help your team scale and do things that you probably couldn't do before. Like everybody they want a NOC or a SOC of that size. Well, I think it's actually pretty possible to do now. You could scale it to like 200 or 300 agents that can augment that person. We're going to be kind of like shepherding the machines around until they hunt us through the burnt out remains of Calgary, probably. But I think that's the biggest focus.
Yeah, I think I read an article that all of Neo's developers are using DeepSeek, right? To write your code? 100%. Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
Monolith CCD.
Joseph, what AI patterns or concerns are consistently coming up in more customer conversations? And what are you, I guess, seeing from an AI perspective in customer environments?
Actually, a lot of the big ones in big enterprises is the internal version of ChatGPT, right? So everybody wants to have a secure internal LLM chatbot, but oftentimes building that is a little bit more complicated than you imagine, right? So whether it is plain things like security logging for it, or understanding exactly what training data is going into the RAG of that model is really, really huge, right? So one part of the AI piece that's going to be really important is understanding what sort of data is actually going into the model. So that's sort of tools that do more data classification, and then can map like, hey, this data type is actually in this model or this one is not, and being able to understand which models have access to what types of data is going to get a lot more important. And that's where I see a lot of them just rush into it. It's like, oh, let me just dump my entire SharePoints into the model. And then, yeah, you could just ask the model, what's the Q4 results in Q3, right? So that's, you don't want that.
Cool. Okay, so forward thinking, what's in, what's out, and what's on the horizon here. But I think, some habits need to do a little Michael Jordan and fade away here. But others, I think it's time to more so double down. So, Gavin, what is an outdated cloud security habit that you wish would just go away? And what's one emerging practice that you wish becomes standard?
I don't have any hot takes on what should go away. I think the analysis side, we're gonna see a lot of AI get in there because it can pull out trends that you just cannot notice, or that would take you a too big of amount of time to do the analysis. And somebody gave an example where we were demoing Codex, where they took in all of our build failures that were happening, plugged them into the LLM and said, what's the common factor here? And it spit out this line of code, and you look at it and you're like, that's it. And you go plug it in, you go test it, and you're like, holy shit, that was it. And that would have taken a staff developer like 2-3 weeks to figure out, and the LLM vibe coded it. And so like figuring out how to think to solve those problems, and it's almost a second order level of thinking with these things where you're going, okay, how can I cut down the analysis time feed it the right data that it's going to make the good decisions. So I can just, go back to YouTube and Reddit or something.
On the other side, I watched lots of companies, especially after the zero interest rate environment go away. There's lots of rad new tools, but I would say, especially Calgary startup scene, don't completely go. I sound like a boomer. Don't go all cloud. The margins that they have are for a reason, because they're often charging 40 times what it would be. It's not that hard to run a computer. They've psyoped you to say it is. There's so many good like co-locations now. The density is so high, and just from like IT can sometimes get, okay, I'm going to go buy all these cool tools, but I'm so disconnected from the business. You should always like reinforce with every one of your teams, like you are still trying to provide value to your customers, and it's not always just like schooling up as much cloud resources as possible. So I think it's still worth having those. I can speak for us, like our cloud footprint is super heavy. We are going to look at like steady state workloads to be able to go back. You can secure them really easy. There's lots of good tools now. So don't sleep on that just from like non-cybersecurity, just from being a good steward of your company's resources. Anybody who's been in Calgary a long time or startups, it's boom and bust. Be like hyper aware of the financial impact of what you're choosing. Use the AI tools to help you across that. Like, I think some of these tools that used to be old, you would have a lot of trouble rolling them out. So you didn't have a huge team, but now you can do a lot of these things that you couldn't have before without a huge team. So make sure you're really, really focused on like the best company is still like a company that has like a healthy bottom line and is providing value. We're not just here to like watch the red lights and roll out new tools that look cool. We've got to like always keep that in mind.
Just the same question for you. One security habit that you wished would just go away.
It's a good one. I would say probably sharing too many things when you're deploying cloud, right? Like a lot of times it's very easy to have one master role, like say like all my applications, they have the same disrupt, they all need to access the same things. To me, that's a cut corner on the least privilege first of all, right? So that one's one that I keep seeing pretty often. And one thing that should be on the rise. Yeah, there you go. But I think being able to tie back to where code came from, or like with the large companies that I often work with, there's still a lot of times where it's like, hey, we found all these security problems, but we don't actually know where they're coming from. So being able to know where on the code that came from, even if it is going back and having a good repository of like, these are the applications that are actually running in this way. These are the people who own them. That link is still very rough. So I would love to see that get a lot better. Yeah.
I was hoping someone would just say spreadsheets from a security practice. Okay, so that wraps up the questions for the panel here. Thank you so much to Steph, Gavin, and Joseph. But I would like to open up to the floor for any questions. Just want to say the first 5 people who do ask a question will be sent a gift from Wiz. Whoa. Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's do this. Let's keep it quick because we don't have too much time. So quick questions. Sure.
Yeah. Hi, Saurabh here. Something so when I first heard about Wiz Bell, I recently found out a security bug with DeepSeek, where just by through normal recon and port scanning, they found like so many sensitive logs. So with so many AI companies springing up at such an unprecedented rate, like how do you even lay that back out of security? Should be as an external framework keeping a check on these unprecedented AI companies that are spinning on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so for context, the Wiz threat intelligence team was able to find some logging that DeepSeek was doing that was basically leaking the entirety of the chat logs. So if you were using the DeepSeek chatbot on the open internet, I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, part of that is having certain tools that you can rely on. Like there's a lot of companies, Wiz is one of them, but there's a bunch of other really good ones that are constantly watching for outside threats. Like if you are a company like Clio or Neo, you probably don't have an internal threat research team that's all they're focused on, because that's not how you're making money. So it goes to that process that Gavin was talking about, of being very mindful of who you select that has a really strong capability, especially if it affects you, is going to be key in that space. Yeah.
Udameke.
Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm a software engineer with Java. I listened to a podcast this morning which kind of blew my night, about North Koreans using AI, using fake IDs and then to apply for jobs, and then using AI to also doing forward the interview to like change their voice, change their face, and getting jobs in US companies for the money, but also to hack into those companies. And they just, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Is that a threat to Canadian companies, or what do you think?
Yeah, I've had people using ChatGPT in job interviews and things like that. It's happening. We've got people impersonating us on job boards, all that crap. The thing that we're thinking about from a policy perspective is you don't get access until you shake hands with somebody in physical person. We're going to actually go back to in-person interviews. Because you got your augmented glasses, you got your speakers, your headphones, all that stuff. Like who knows, maybe this isn't me and I'm sharing opinions of my CTO right now, right? Like you're none the wiser until we kind of have those handshake moments, and especially if you're on a Zoom call. So in person is going to become a lot more important, which is weird post-pandemic.
Got a question for the panel member who suggested that their developers are 2.5 times more productive using AI to write code. How do you measure productivity, and do you measure any increase in number of bug fixes required?
Yeah, so we are seeing the defect rate go up as well. Totally, there's no gotcha in that one. You write more code, you're going to ship more defects. The thing that we're looking at is, okay, are we having a greater impact on the code base? Can we get features out to customers at a faster pace? And again, coming back to that original point I made, these tools are the worst that they're ever going to be. They're only getting better. And so for us, it's a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off of that risk of, okay, you ship a bug that sits in production for a little bit, a customer calls, tells you it's there, and then you go fix it. Like, okay, done. We've done that for decades.
Adil.
Hello, my name is Mohammed. Question for the panel about pen testing. So I assume that the tools that you were talking about includes the penetration testing from third-party vendors. So my question is, with the advent of the AI, why can't every company like their own pen testing tool? Is it still beneficial to use third-party tools to have a black box look at your environment? Or is it now easy for companies to write their own pen testing tools and make it more extensive?
I think I described it a little bit. Like, I do think you should be able to augment, which you probably couldn't before. With more and more of these vendors will probably provide like a suite of agents to do like continuous pen tests. They've already kind of had that from an automation perspective. The one I'm super interested in, I don't think there's a good answer to this, is like the rise of the MCP server. And are we going to see, like, we always saw like SQL injections? Are you going to see effectively a prompt injection? I don't know if that's in the open yet, but for sure we're going to, and they're going to make, like, it'll be a huge news headline. Somebody's going to have an externally exposed MCP server. And if you can craft the correct prompt response, you should be able to access some internal tools. So I think both you'll be able to help from the positive side. Like a lot of industries, I don't think you will be able to just completely take that in-house. You will a lot of the regulatory requirements are you have a third party come in, verified. It is always, I think it's a good thing. That's why you still do code reviews, why you're not the same person who's cutting the PR and you're putting it into production. I think that's always a good thing to do, whether it's humans or robots doing it external. But I'm super fascinated with what's the next type of injection. And I think probably an MCP/prompt injection. So
Just to quickly add on that, like one of the things we strive for at Wiz, we had this concept called an issue, which is more like a higher level thing, more than just a vulnerability or a network exposure or misconfiguration. We strive so that any of our issues are basically the equivalent of the pen test. And to us, like regulatory reasons, pen tests will always be there. But if you're waiting once a year to test one application on a pen test in an environment where you have thousands of applications and all of them are getting more and more critical and interconnected, it's not fun, right? So whether you're going to try to write one internally or you're going to buy a specific tool, you can't rely on a yearly pen test and say, hey, I'm...
Ovian.
Thank you, Pan, for coming and sharing your experiences. My name is Mafaz. I just have a quick question on, we're all using LLMs. My question is based on this. What if you download the LLM and you basically cut it off from the internet and you're using it internally? Is that, how secure is that? Have you guys found in your experiences any backports on any kind of data traveling out it, even though the server might be isolated and cut off from the internet, there's no data going out? Is there any ways on these that you see that this still, has some security issues? We better do.
could be.
I guess this is your definition of safe, right? Like if let's say you download a model and you're trying to use it to help you with programming, right? If you don't know how it was trained, it might be very subtly introducing exploits into your code, right? So, like most of the big models that we all know are not going to be doing that stuff, hopefully. But if you download some model from some sketchy places, even if you cut it off from the internet, the outputs that it might give you, if you trust them inherently, because hey, it's an LLM, I trust it. We might run into trouble. Yeah.
Just a new one.
Yeah.
Are you inferring which day Skynet became self-aware? I do. For now, I don't think they can break the laws of physics. So if you have our initial take with should have zero trust, least privilege, be like hardcore about that. But I don't know. I guess potentially it can slit the lesions into the T and masters, and I can't wait till that happens.
All right, the start, but we got the 6 back here.
Thanks very much, everyone. Let's ask about like SaaS, DaaS scanning, like virtual artificial intelligence. I don't know that. How fast are you approaching that? Are you having developers do normal code scanning reviews that check the work that you're running LLM agents to check results, demonstrate the feedback pool, this line is bad, this line is bad, our daughter?
Yeah, I've been playing with that for my group, and I told my group, go innovate in this space. What is going to happen, whether that's via MCPs or however, you take the output from these things, feed them into the AI agents, and they just fix them, and they get it so close to right. It's that 80-20 rule. 80% of them go away and nobody even has to look at them. I mean, obviously somebody's going to review them and everything like that, but very little effort to get there. And then that last 20% is going to be the thing that you have to put a little bit of human intelligence on. But the reason why I'm so optimistic in this is I just see how close and how good it's getting and how fast it is. It's almost like the equivalent, and this is kind of a security posture thing. It's the equivalent of giving everybody an intern, right? And if you think about it that way, you want to put the checks and balances in place for the interns because, you shouldn't have a company of 1,000 interns running around. They're going to fuck shit up. But at the same time, they're going to produce a lot of work and they're going to, hopefully, if the checks and balances are in place, produce a lot of value for the company and the customer. And that's ultimately what all of this is driving towards.
Cool. Let's wrap it there. Chief Random Class for these ones. That's awesome.